Introduction to English Punctuation. Lesson Goals. Punctuation is a very important element of a language. It clears the meaning of a sentence. In this module, you will learn in detail about punctuation, its history, types, importance, usage, errors, and pauses. Learning outcome. Define English punctuation briefly. Classify the types of punctuation to know the variation. Identify the list of punctuation in English. Realize how much important punctuation is and utilize the uses properly. Figure out the top 6 errors in punctuation and the punctuating pauses. What is English punctuation? Punctuation can be thought of as the mortar that holds the bricks together in a sentence. If words are considered as bricks, punctuation could be the mortar that helps in creating meaningful sentences. Punctuation provides structure, pacing, and ultimately meaning to our writing. Punctuation involves using symbols to highlight the meaning of written sentences and parts of sentences. The symbols are called punctuation marks. Words written down represent words spoken out loud, not vice versa. Pauses, intonation, and volume, all elements of speech that convey meaning, have a relationship with punctuation. Punctuation is generally useful in establishing a writing word structure and logic. Many writings would be open to multiple interpretations without punctuation. English punctuations refers to the punctuations used in the English language. These are some typical signs of English punctuation. Types of punctuation. There are 15 unique punctuation marks that are used in everyday written English. They are categorized according to their function. There are 5 types of punctuation based on their functions. Terminal points. It includes full stops, exclamation marks, and question marks. Punctuations for break and pauses. This type includes comma, semicolon, and colon. Brackets. This category includes different kinds of brackets like round brackets and square brackets. Connectors and dividers. This category includes hyphens, dashes, forward slashes, and apostrophes. Quote materials. Quote material includes question marks and ellipses. List of punctuation in English. Next few slides will show you the most commonly used punctuation marks through visual representations of each punctuation mark along with the name of the punctuation mark and a very simple example sentence for each punctuation mark. Punctuation mark. The name of the punctuation mark is full stop. Here's an example. Moon likes English. Full stop. Punctuation mark, comma. Example. Mihal knows English, French, and Thai. Punctuation mark, semicolon. Mukta doesn't often go shopping. She prefers to play badminton. Punctuation mark, colon. Example. Mumu has 2 options. Finishing the work today or losing the contract. Punctuation mark, hyphen. Example. This topic is a rather out-of-date book. Punctuation mark, dash. Example. In each town, London, Paris, and New York, they stayed in youth hostels. Punctuation mark, question mark. Where's chef's table? Punctuation mark, exclamation mark. Help! Subah cried. I can't swim. Slash, forward slash, or oblique. Please press your browser's refresh, oblique, reload button, backslash, c:/files /joe.doc. Double quotation marks. I can do this, she said. Single quotation marks. I can't do this, she said. Apostrophe. This is Mehdi's car. Underline. Have you read Pride and Prejudice? Underscore b_i@cia.gov. Round brackets. They went to Bangkok, their favorite city, and stayed there for 2 weeks. Square brackets. The newspaper reported that the hostage, most of them Spanish, had been released. Ellipsis mark. One happy customer wrote, "This is the best program that I ever seen." Importance of punctuation. Punctuation marks help prevent someone from misinterpreting words if they are used incorrectly in a document. In a language, punctuation marks are very important for conveying meaning. Punctuation helps convey the clarify written language meaning. An example of a simple character is a full stop or comma, and an example of complex character is semicolon or hyphen. To indicate the exact length and meaning of the sentence, it includes using small, sometimes subtle textures. In good punctuation, the reader is advised to stop and organize the information in the document, following the rhythm of speech. Authors use punctuation to help their readers understand their message. Punctuation can be an expressive tool in both oral and written discourse. Punctuation marks clarify sentences such as full stops, commas, and semicolons. Readers use punctuation to learn how sentences are constructed and how they should be read. Reports are written using sentences as building blocks. The statements are complete. The punctuation marks demonstrate how the sentence should be read and clarify its meaning. How to use punctuation like a pro. Now you will get to know the uses of punctuation like a pro, such as full stop. English uses the full stop widely and intuitively and is one of the most common punctuation marks. A full stop signifies the completion of sentence, not to emphasize its meaning or elevate its style. Comma. There are several important uses of the comma, one of the most diverse punctuation marks. Commas are commonly used to separate sentence elements such as adjectives or items of a list. A comma should also be used when a logical pause is needed between two parts of a sentence. You can also use a comma when writing down a date or when you want to separate a city's name from a country's name. Question mark. In sentences with direct questions, the last word of the sentence will also have an immediate question, but only for direct questions. A question mark is not required in indirect questions. Using a question mark at the end of a sentence classified as a request does not need to be framed as a question. The question mark should always be placed after long and complex questions found in periodicals. A question mark is always needed when there is a question within the sentence, for example, when it's enclosed in quotes or brackets. Exclamation mark. Exclamation marks serve a stylistic purpose. They convey emotions such as excitement and highlight urgency or dramatic content. You can make your text more attention-grabbing by using exclamation marks when needed. Exclamation marks are often used to express sarcasm or surprise, which are less common uses of the exclamation mark. Literature and professional settings do not allow multiple exclamation marks, whereas informal writing does. colon. The colon punctuation mark usually precedes a list of items. When writing a sentence with two independent clauses, where the second one illustrates the first one, use a colon. Sometimes colons are used interchangeably with the em dash to signal the end of the sentence. Semicolon. Semicolons are indispensable in several texts in which they appear. To improve the readability of a long sentence, you can omit conjunctions. Another reason to use a semicolon is where you have two related short sentences that you want to combine into a single phrase. One more acceptable use of the semicolon is to separate the items on a list. Brackets. The brackets are usually used in two cases. When you need to introduce an afterthought into the sentence and when you need to provide clarification. In both cases, it's very important that the sentence reads logically, is informative, and makes sense even without the text in the parentheses. In other words, the brackets should not change the structure or purpose of the sentence and should only provide additional information. Hyphen. Hyphen is the most commonly used in compound words, consisting of two or more words representing a different idea. However, not all compound words are written with a hyphen. Some can be open or closed compound words. Another common case that calls for using the hyphen is numbers written in words. N dash. It's very important to differentiate between the hyphen and N dash. The most common use of N dash is a range of numbers, distance, or relationships. The uses of hyphens and N dashes in ranges and distances are relatively straightforward, but the use of an N dashes to indicate relationships can be more complex. The content of relationships that an N dash can introduce includes connection, conflict, and distances. M dash. In professional writing, M dashes are one of the most commonly used punctuation marks. M dashes can be used instead of parentheses, commas, and semicolons, depending on the context. The main purpose of an M dash is to provide a stylistically impactful interruption in the text, replacing the need for parentheses, commas, or semicolons depending on the context. Single question mark. A single question mark is a less common punctuation mark that can be very useful in the following situations. To show possession. To show contractions. To introduce a quote within a sentence. Double question marks. The only case where double question marks are used is to signal the presence of quotes. There are no other situations where the use of quotation marks is justified, whether it's for emphasis or to highlight a title of a book or film. Double question marks can also be used to indicate dialogue, and there are some situations where they may be used for emphasis, such as in scare quotes. Top 6 errors in punctuation. You can encounter 6 errors in punctuation, such as apostrophes for plurals. Foreigners learning English as a second language are prone to making the mistake of using apostrophes for plurals. Native English speakers typically learn how to form plurals at a young age through exposure to spoken and written language. Apostrophes are used in English to indicate ownership and contractions. For example, it's time to go, but never to form plurals. Wrong. The girls will go to school tomorrow. Right. The girls will go to school tomorrow. The first sentence is incorrect because it uses an apostrophe to form a plural, which is not correct in English. The comma splice. A conjunction must be used to connect independent clauses separated by comma. There is a comma splice if the conjunction is not present. A full stop can be substituted for the comma, or a conjunction can be added to fix the mistake of comma splice. Wrong. The house costs £100,000. I'll buy it. Here the sentence is wrong because a comma is added in between two sentences, which is not necessary. Right. The house costs £100,000. I'll buy it. Here the use of full stop in between two sentences clarifies the previous error. Right. The house costs £100,000 and I'll buy it. Use of comma is definitely appropriate here. Quotation marks for emphasis. A quotation mark is typically used to quote a speech, sentence, or word. Irony can also be expressed using them. Comments or corrections cannot be accented with them. The error is often found in advertisements and promotional materials. Boldface type is better than quotation marks for emphasizing a word. Wrong. You are getting this gift for free. Right. You are getting this gift for free. Multiple punctuation marks. No matter how excited you are when writing that sentence, do not use more than one exclamation point without sounding like a teenager or MySpace. There should only be 3 dots between the question mark and the ellipsis. Business and formal writing rarely use exclamation points. You probably should review your text if it is filled with them. Wrong. Whoa. 4 exclamation mark. Wrong. He was silent. Ellipsis mark. Right. Whoa. 1 exclamation mark. Right. He was silent. Full stop. Punctuation outside the quotation marks. American English requires other punctuation to be included inside question marks, even if it's not part of the quote itself. British English, however, places punctuation outside quotation mark if it is not part of the quoted sentence. Let's have a look at the difference between British and American use of quotation marks. British English. Uncle John said, comma, quotation mark, my car is blue, the end of quotation mark. And then the full stop. American English. Uncle John said, quotation mark, my car is blue, full stop, and then the quotation mark. The missing comma after introductory elements. Sometimes you want to introduce or provide a background to a certain sentence. That is fine, but do not forget to place a comma after the introductory element. Notice that an essential part can be sentence, like in the example below, or single word, for an example, however, and so on. Wrong. Before going to school, Joe stopped at my house. Full stop. Here the comma is missing after the introductory elements. So the right one is, before going to school, comma, Joe stopped at my house. Punctuating pauses. Basically, you must pause when you find 3 particular punctuation in a sentence: commas, full stops, and dashes. Comma. When you find a comma, you need to pause for a half to breath. Full stops. In case of full stops, you must pause for a full breath. Dashes. Dashes require a cessation of breathing. And rest of the punctuations: colon, semicolon, a hyphen, brackets, question mark, and exclamation marks do not require pauses. Lesson synopsis. Punctuation involves using symbols to highlight the meaning of written sentences and parts of sentences. Punctuation is generally useful in establishing a written word's structure and logic. Punctuation was first used in the 3rd century BC. In 1529, Geoffrey Troy used the apostrophe for the first time. Terminal points. Lesson goal. In English sentences, terminal points indicate the completion of independent clauses. In this module, you will learn about terminal points such as full stops, exclamation marks, and question marks, and their role in clarifying the intended meaning of a sentence. Learning objectives. Define terminal points and provide examples. Explain the importance of full stops in sentence structure. Identify various places to put full stops. Understand the role of full stops in initialism and acronyms. Detail the usage of exclamation marks, including examples. Explaining the three-dimensional uses of exclamation marks and question marks with specific examples. Identify the importance of using question marks in sentences. Definition of terminal points. Terminal points require a solid explanation. You mostly heard of the term terminal point. It is something related to bus stoppage. This is the point where the bus stops. In punctuation, there are some terminal points that refer to the sentence's end. This is also considered an endpoint or stop. Term terminals are the points at which a complete sentence ends. Full stops, exclamation points, and question marks fall into this category. Full stop. Full stop is a mark used at the end of sentences that are not questions or exclamations. For example, I need to buy new glasses. Full stop. She didn't like the play. Full stop. Reports indicate increased activity in the region. Full stop. If I could live anywhere in the world, I would move to Beijing. Full stop. Please don't be angry with him for what he said. Full stop. Full stops are also used to mark abbreviations and functions as decimal points in non-whole numbers. For instance, let's find an ATM, automated teller machine, so I can withdraw some cash. Your appointment has been rescheduled for next Tuesday. At current market value, the dollar is worth 0.89901 euros. Various places to put full stops. Full stops are being put at various places, like sentences with punctuation. Full stops are commonly used to punctuate the end of sentences. It is used in almost all types of sentences in this way. For example, I run 4 miles every morning. Please get the chopping board. Using question marks with full stops. There are two places where the full stop can appear if quotation marks are used to indicate something that has been said by someone else. The CEO said, "This is a great day for the company." Full stops with abbreviation. In a sentence, full stops indicate abbreviations, letters that have been omitted from words. An abbreviated term always ends with a full stop. For example, please continue to page 41 for further instructions. Dr. Davis has been of immense service to the hospital. British English titles. Generally, formal titles such as Mr., Mrs., or Doctor are abbreviations, but they are not always used in contracted forms. The full stop is usually left out in British English because abbreviations do not need punctuation to be understood since they are so common. It's therefore common to read Mr. Jones, Mrs. Smith, or Dr. Casey, for example, in writing that uses British English styles. Initials of names. Initials are a kind of abbreviation of people's names formed from the first letter of each part of the name, first, middle, and last name. For example, Martin S. Smith, the renowned physicist, will speak here next month. I love the writing of J.R.R. Tolkien. Full stops in initialism and acronyms. As with initials, acronyms and initialisms use their initial letters to abbreviate multiple words. When read loud, acronyms are pronounced as a single word. As a result, they are usually written without full stops, but only sometimes. Many acronyms are so common that they are no longer capitalized. For example, NASA scientists confirmed the location of the spacecraft on Mars, acronym of National Aeronautics and Space Administration. The officer went AWOL following the attack, the acronym of Absent Without Leave. The documents must be completed ASAP, acronym of As Soon as Possible, also often written as ASAP, ASAP, or A.S.A.P. There was a problem with his scuba equipment. Scuba is an acronym for Self-Contained Underwater Breathing Apparatus, but it is now written as a regular word. Like acronyms, initialisms are formed by speaking individual letters instead of one word aloud. However, because they are so similar in appearance to acronyms, initialisms are often referred to as acronyms. Like acronyms, it is most common to write initialism without full stops. Here are some examples of common initialism. Some with periods, some without. I grew up in the UK, but I have lived in London since my early 20s. An initialism of United Kingdom. It took a long time, but I have friendly earned my PhD. In initialism of philosophy, Doctor. Latin for Doctor of Philosophy. I need to go to an ATM to get some cash. An initialism of automated teller machine. Exclamation marks. An exclamation mark is commonly used to express strong, intense emotions in declarations or to add emphasis to interjections and commands. For example, I can't wait to travel to Paris next week. I can't believe I got into law school! Exclamation mark. Yuck! Exclamation mark. I hate coconuts! Exclamation mark. That was an impressive victory! Exclamation mark. Congratulations! Exclamation mark. Please don't stay out too late tonight! Exclamation mark. Three-dimensional uses of exclamation marks. There are three-dimensional uses of exclamation marks, such as ending exclamatory sentences. Declarative sentences that express strong emotions such as anger, excitement, surprise, or disgust are commonly ended with exclamation points instead of full stops. These are sometimes called exclamatory sentences. For example, I can't wait to travel to Paris next week! Exclamation mark. I can't believe I got into law school! Exclamation mark. Interjections. The word interjection is also called an exclamation and is used to express emotions such as surprise, happiness, excitement, and anger. There is no grammatical connection between an interjection and anything else in a sentence. A full stop, an exclamation point, or a question mark can be used to punctuate them because they can stand alone as minor sentences. For example, hooray! Exclamation mark. I got accepted to my top choice university! Exclamation mark. Yuck! Exclamation mark. I hate coconuts! Exclamation mark. That was an impressive victory! Exclamation mark. Congratulations! Exclamation mark. Adding emphasis to imperative sentences. Imperative sentences are direct requests or commands. They are formed by omitting the sentence's subject and using the verb's initiative form, without the particle to. For example, please finish all of your vegetables. Have the report finished by 5 o'clock. Drop me off in front of the school. Exclamation marks are used to intensify a command, generally to indicate anger, exasperation, or urgency. For example, please don't stay out too late tonight! Exclamation mark. Get out of here now! Exclamation mark. Go to your room this instant! Exclamation mark. Three-dimensional uses of exclamation marks. There are three-dimensional uses of exclamation marks, such as ending exclamatory sentences, declarative sentences that express strong emotions such as anger, excitement, surprise, or disgust are commonly ended with exclamation points instead of full stops. These are sometimes called exclamatory sentences. For example, I can't wait to travel to Paris next week! Exclamation mark. I can't believe I got into law school! Exclamation mark. Interjections. The word interjection is also called an exclamation and is used to express emotions such as surprise, happiness, excitement, and anger. There is no grammatical connection between an interjection and anything else in a sentence. A full stop, an exclamation point, or a question mark can be used to punctuate them because they can stand alone as minor sentences. For example, hooray! Exclamation mark. I got accepted to my top choice university! Exclamation mark. Yuck! Exclamation mark. I hate coconuts! Exclamation mark. That was an impressive victory! Exclamation mark. Congratulations! Exclamation mark. Adding emphasis to imperative sentences. Imperative sentences are direct requests or commands. They are formed by omitting the sentence's subject and using the verb's initiative form, without the particle to. For example, please finish all of your vegetables. Have the report finished by 5 o'clock. Drop me off in front of the school. Exclamation marks are used to intensify a command, generally to indicate anger, exasperation, or urgency. For example, please don't stay out too late tonight! Exclamation mark. Get out of here now! Exclamation mark. Go to your room this instant! Exclamation mark. Question marks. Question marks are used to ask questions. While it is usually a matter of intent and preference whether to use a period or an exclamation point is declarative, conditional, or imperative sentences, you must use question marks in interrogative sentences, sentences that ask questions. To use any other terminal point would turn a query into a statement. Here are some examples. How are you feeling? Question mark. You can't be serious, can you? Question mark. Did it end just like that? Question mark. How? Question mark. When? Question mark. Important places to use question marks. Important uses of question marks. Tag questions. In tag questions, a declarative statement is tagged at the end with a question mark. They are usually used as a rhetorical devices to indicate knowledge, belief, surprise, or disbelief of the answer. For example, you will be home in time for dinner, right? Here, right is the tag question. They won't have the report finished on time, will they? You can't be serious, can you? In addition to tag questions, imperative sentences can also be used to add politeness to requests, invitations, or instructions. For instance, have some more tea, won't you? Question mark. Help me dry these dishes, will you? Question mark. Other interrogative sentences. Interrogative sentences sometimes consist of declarative statements posed as questions. Often a question mark is added to end the sentence in writing, as in, you own? It ended just like that? Excuse me. You can also ask questions with a single word. For example, your delivery has arrived. When? Multiple minor questions. In some cases, you can have multiple brief questions within the same sentence, even though a question mark almost always indicates the end of a sentence. These questions aim to clarify specific possibilities arising from the main question. The questions that follow the first question mark do not need to be capitalized. For example, how much pizza do you want? 1 slice? 2 slices? What's that in the sky? A bird? A plane? However, it is more common to see such cases capitalized, in which case they function as minor sentences. How often would you say you use the school's online library? Once a year? Once a week? Once a day? Lesson synopsis. Terminals are the points at which a complete sentence ends. Full stops are also used to mark abbreviations and function as decimal points in non-whole numbers. Initials are a kind of abbreviation of people's names formed from the first letter of each part of the name, first, middle, and last name. An exclamation mark is commonly used to express strong, intense emotions in declarations or to add emphasis to interjections and commands. Question marks are used to ask questions. Punctuation for breaks and pauses. Lesson goal. Breaks or pauses are important to convey the depth of sentences. This module will discuss the punctuations like comma, semicolon, and colon and their uses as breaks or pauses in sentences. As a result, you will learn to use the punctuation for breaks. Outcomes from this module. Define comma and understand the situation of using comma. Explain semicolon with its uses clearly. Identify the situations where not to use semicolons. Interpret colon to perceive the uses of colons in writing. Comma. The use of commas, semicolons, and colons indicates a pause or break in the flow of the sentence. Commas are typically used to separate information within brackets from the rest of the sentence or to join clauses, essential elements, or items in a list. For example, the seminar will be led by either Tom, Bill, Jan, or Michelle. Another sentence is, in a way, they are both right. When writing a date, a long number, or separating quoted sentences from the unquoted text, commas are used for several technical purposes. I first arrived in Europe on September 6, 2010. There are over 15,000 protesters gathered outside the Buckingham Palace. Situation to use comma. Joining independent clauses. The comma is usually followed by a coordinating conjunction when you link two or more independent clauses, and but, or, so, for, nor, or yet. For example, my family moved into the new house, comma, and the neighbors welcomed them warmly. She wanted to play badminton, comma, but he wanted to play basketball. We can go to the movies tonight, comma, or we can stay home. Joining items in a list. Coordinating conjunctions can join independent clauses as well as people and things. The last and second to last items of a list should be separated by comma, using a coordinating conjunction between them. For example, I enjoy swimming, comma, hiking, comma, and riding my bicycle. Either Tom, comma, Bill, comma, Jeff, or Mike will lead the seminar. Joining coordinated adjectives. Depending on their function, commas are often used between adjectives when describing the same noun. Generally, commas are used between adjectives that describe a noun independently. They are referred to as coordinate adjectives. For example, I bought a heavy, comma, long table. Noun tables are described separated by each of the above adjectives. Changing the order of adjectives is one way to check if they are coordinates. Here are some examples. I bought a long, comma, heavy table. This sentence sounds correct, so you know it is the right coordinate adjectives. Here are some more examples of sentences using coordinate adjectives. It was a dark, cold, blustery day. There's no way I'm staying in an old, dirty, drafty room like this. Repetition of adjectives and adverbs. Commas are used between repeated adjectives or adverbs to emphasize a description. For example, your mother and I are very, comma, very proud of you. It is just a sad, comma, sad occasion. Cumulative adjectives. Cumulative adjectives are adjectives that build on one another to create a complete description instead of standing alone, such as I bought a black, comma, wooden table. Black describes a wooden table, not just a table alone, and so this sentence would sound strange if rearranged like this. I bought a black wooden table. You can also try inserting and with the same result. I bought a black wooden table. The sentence doesn't sound right when rearranged or when and is added. So you know that you are dealing with cumulative adjectives and you should not separate them with a comma. Introductory information. In an introduction, commas are used to link the introductory information sentence. Dependent clauses can contain words, phrases, or entire sentences. For example, strangely, she wrote to Michelle but not to me. In a way, comma, they are both right. When he was traveling in Croatia, comma, he met a lot of interesting people. Afterthoughts and closing comments. A comma precedes the final or closing thought at the end of a sentence, just as it follows an introductory element. For example, to be clear, comma, I never said that I would have the project finished by the date. I find such behavior appealing, comma, frankly. I would like to have a bit more, comma, please. She works for a financial firm, comma, but she is a remarkably accomplished theater director, comma, 2. Absolute phrases. There are several types of absolute phrases. The most common are complete constructions, which consist of a noun or pronoun and a participle, as well as any modifying information. It is always considered a parenthetical element, so it is always set apart by 1 or 2 commas. You usually use absolute phrases at the beginning of a sentence to introduce additional information or at the end to provide a final comment on the sentence as a whole. However, it is also possible to use an absolute phrase in the middle of a sentence to highlight or emphasize the additional information. For example, the test finished, comma, and James heaved a sigh of relief. She walked out the door, comma, her head turning for a last look at home. Appositives. Noun appositives are proper nouns or noun phrases that describe or rename another noun or pronoun. Typically, appositives describe a noun by providing parenthetical, non-essential information. Comma-surrounded non-restrictive appositives are known as non-restrictive appositives. Appositives appear in the middle of the sentence and are surrounded by 2 commas at the beginning or end. They are preceded or followed by just 1 comma. For example, the heir, Prince William, is adored by many. The proper noun Prince William provides a name for the noun heir. The office, comma, an old colonial building, badly needed repairs. The appositive phrase, an old colonial building, describes the noun office. A true classic, comma, this book inspired a generation of young readers. Relative clauses. A relative clause, also known as an adjective clause or an adjectival clause, provides a descriptive information about a noun or noun phrase. An adverb or relative pronoun introduces a relative clause. Who, whom, whose, which, and that, and a relative adverb, where, when, and why. The woman down the street, comma, whose children are the same age as ours, comma, invited us over for dinner next week. Samantha, comma, whom I have asked to be my bridesmaid, comma, is getting married next year. Nouns of address. Nouns of address are the persons or things you are directly addressing. In the same way as interjections, they do not modify or affect any other part of the sentence grammatically. Rather, they are used to indicate who is being spoken to or to get their attention. For example, James, comma, I need you to help me with the dishes. Can I have some money, comma, Mom? Listing the year in a date. On July 1, 1961, Princess Diana was born in Norfolk. Countries and states. Paris, Texas, is nothing at all like Paris, France. Using commas with quotations, direct speech. John said, I will never live in this city again. Long numbers. Just over 20,000 students attend a private university. Semicolon. The semicolon serves 2 main purposes: to separate lengthy or complex items within a list and to connect independent clauses. Often they are described as stronger than commas but more powerful than full stops. That's why, despite its name, a semicolon should be thought of as a hybrid between a period and a comma. For example, in less than 10 years, I lived in London, Manchester, semicolon, Liverpool, Bristol, Cambridge, Derby, semicolon, Norwich, Bradford, semicolon, and Chester. When to use semicolon? The semicolon divides items in a list more clearly when one or more items already include commas. For example, recipients of this year's awards will consist of the law firm Jacobs, Jacobs and Smith, semicolon, A1 Consultants, LLC, semicolon, and several advertising, marketing, and digital media companies. Numbered, lettered, and vertical lists. Semicolons are used in lists if the individual items in the list use commas internally. Your assignment for the evening is as follows. 1. Interview an older relative about his or her experiences growing up, semicolon. 2. Write down your own experiences for the same time period, semicolon. 3. Write a one-page report that compares and contrasts your experiences to those of your relative. Joining independent clauses. In a compound sentence, semicolons link independent clauses with inherent relationships, such as contrast or causation. Don't run near the pool, semicolon, you might slip and hurt yourself. Using semicolons with conjunctive adverbs. In contrast to coordinating conjunctions, another type of conjunction is almost always paired with a semicolon. Adverbs that describe the relationship between clauses are known as conjunctive adverbs. Kate hadn't enjoyed the play, therefore she didn't recommend it. When not to use a semicolon? In dependent clause, the link between independent clauses must be expressed by a comma or no punctuation because dependent clauses rely on independent clauses for meaning. To maintain cohesion, a semicolon would be too strong between clauses. So don't use it. For example, whenever I travel to London, I always stay in the same hotel overlooking the Culpeper. Don't use semicolons between unrelated independent clauses. Tomatoes are fruit. They were once considered poisonous. There is no direct connection between tomatoes being a fruit and their once poisonous reputation. Due to this, joining the two clauses with a semicolon creates a confusing sentence since it implies a relationship between them. They may not exist. Colon. In an independent clause, a colon is used to illustrate or clarify what the clause means. In addition to introducing a list, it can also introduce words, phrases, or whole clauses that complete the meaning of previous clause. For example, your homework for the evening is as follows. Interview a relative about his or her childhood. Answer the same questions about your own childhood, and then write a short report that compares the two. The addition of as follows makes the introductory clause independent, so a colon is appropriate here. Colon. In an independent clause, a colon is used to illustrate or clarify what the clause means. In addition to introducing a list, it can also introduce words, phrases, or whole clauses that complete the meaning of previous clause. For example, your homework for the evening is as follows. Interview a relative about his or her childhood. Answer the same questions about your own childhood, and then write a short report that compares the two. The addition of as follows makes the introductory clause independent, so a colon is appropriate here. Uses of colon. Generally, colons should only be used after independent clauses, which are sentences that can stand on their own as complete sentences and are not grammatically dependent on the information introduced by the colon. Your homework for the evening is to interview a relative about his or her childhood. Answer the same questions about your own childhood and then write a short report that compares the two. Introducing lists. Most commonly, colons are used to introduce lists of information. For example, in my opinion, the perfect sandwich has only 3 things: ham, cheese, and mayonnaise. If you want to do a numbered list, you can use colon, such as your assignment for the evening is as follows: colon 1. Interview an older relative about his or her experiences growing up. 2. Write down your own experience for the same time period. 3. Write a 1-page report that compares and contrasts your experiences to those of your relative. In addition to lettered lists, you can also use them when you want to emphasize each item in a list, especially when the list presents an election that must be made or if the item will be referenced again later. For example, we will need 4 things for the oncoming audit: colon A. Copies of all bank statements over the last year. B. A letter from the bank confirming your company's signatories. C. Any receipts for business-related purchase made this year. D. A profit and loss report for the year to date. In doing vertical lists, you can use comma. Let's look at some examples. Your assignment for the evening is as follows: interview an older relative about his or her experience growing up. Written down your own experiences for the same time period. Write a 1-page report that compares and contrasts your experiences to those of your relative. Introducing other texts. It is common to use colons to introduce lists, but they can also be used to explain or illustrate previous clauses by introducing words, phrases, clauses, or even multiple sentences. For example, one thing is for sure, we weren't going to get a better deal than the other one they're offering today. Quotations. Additionally, a colon can be used to introduce a complete quotation, especially when no reporting verb is used, such as said, told, asked, etc. For example, always remember Polonius's famous line in Hamlet, colon, this above all else, colon, to thine own self be true. Other technical use. Besides being a grammatical function, the colon also serves as illustrative or grammatical introduction information. The colon is also used for a number of technical, non-grammatical reasons in writing. Writing the time. Our flight is at 8:30, so we will need to be at the airport by 6:30 a.m. at the latest. Writing numerical ratios. The proportion of international students compared to UK-born students in the university has increased to nearly 2:1. Citing Bible chapters and verses. One of my favorite passages is from 1 Corinthians 13:4-7, which begins with, "Love is patient, love is kind." Citing pages from a journal volume. According to Harris, unemployment should decrease to around 4% by the year 2020. The Journal of Economics Histories 8:25. Writing dialogue. Diane, you were lying to me again. Tell me the truth. Anthony, backing up nervously towards the door, I can explain, it's all just a big misunderstanding. Lesson synopsis. The use of commas, semicolons, and colons indicates a pause or break in the flow of the sentence. The comma is usually followed by a coordinating conjunction when you link two or more independent clauses, and, but, or, so, for, nor, or yet. The semicolon serves two main purposes: to separate lengthy or complex items within a list, and it connect independent clauses. Semicolons are used in lists if the individual items in the list use commas internally. In an independent clause, a colon is used to illustrate or clarify what the clause means. Brackets. Lesson goal. Brackets are more important to highlight any note. This module will discuss different types of brackets, like round brackets or square brackets, along with their necessity in English. By this time, you will get a clear understanding on the uses of brackets. Lesson outcome. Define round brackets in detail. Know the importance of round brackets. Explain square brackets precisely. Review what are the necessities of square brackets in English. Demonstrate the fact of brackets within the brackets. Identify other types of brackets along with the round and square brackets. Round brackets. A round bracket separates parenthetical information that has no grammatical significances to the structure of the overall sentence. Clause, phrases, words, or punctuation marks can be used here. For example, as she has said before, on numerous occasions, they must find a long-term solution to this problem. The goal by Beckham, and what a goal, secured the team's entry into the championship finals. Importance of round brackets. Round brackets are important to show alternatives or options. For example, any student or students interested in taking part should email me. A goat should give from 3 or 6 points, 1.7 to 3.4 liters of milk every day. It is used around letters and around explanations and examples that are not essential to meaning. For example, Eliza liked fruit, bananas, and strawberries in particular, on her morning cereal. You can also use it around letters and figures that label items in lists within sentences. For example, to play the game, follow these steps. 1. Roll the dice. 2. Move your game piece. And 3. Solve the problem on the square. Fragments. Generally, round brackets enclose words, phrases, or dependent clauses within a sentence since the information cannot function as a sentence on its own. For example, as he has said before, on numerous occasions, they must find a long-term solution to this problem. Complete sentences. Whenever there is a parenthetical element that stands alone, or more than one, as a complete sentence, the opening bracket will appear after the full stop of the previous sentence, and the closing bracket will appear before the first word of the next sentence. The sentence within will end with a full stop, question mark, or exclamation mark, which will appear inside the closing brackets. For example, the last time I went to Bristol, I had an awful experience. I won't be visiting again anytime soon. Complete sentences within sentences. I won't bore you with the details. It's not a very interesting story, but suffice it to say that I am looking for a new job. Time zones and telephone numbers. Round brackets are important to specify the time zone when they indicate a particular hour. So we agreed. The next board meeting will take place on June 23 at 8 a.m. PST. Time duration. You can use round brackets to indicate a specific time duration, for example. During Sabah's time as CEO 2007 to 2011, she helped to spearhead the new product line. You can include numbers or letters before items in lists that require a certain structure or order. Round brackets surround numbers or letters in these lists, and a semicolon separates each item. For instance, your assignment for the evening is as follows. Interview an older relative about his or her experience growing up. 2. Write down your own experiences for the same period. 3. Write a one-page report that compares and contrasts your experience to those of your relative. You can include a translation in round brackets or the original characters if the language uses non-Arabic lettering, of writing in a foreign language, which is usually italicized, after the foreign text, which will usually be in italics. For example, the only thing I learned to say in Spanish is una más, por favor. One more, please. Square brackets. Square brackets contain information that doesn't affect the sentence's overall structure. Instead of indicating supplemental or incidental information within quoted speech, brackets indicate that the writer has added clarification or explanation to the quotation. For example, she, the governor, insisted that the restructured budget would not result in funding shortfalls for schools. The acting president has confirmed that the UN will ultimately have oversight our reunification. Necessity of square brackets. A square bracket can also differentiate parenthetical information within another bracket set. Informally, though, using a second set of parentheses is quite common. For example, at least I will have some extra spending money this summer. My cousin got me a job at my uncle's, his dad's, warehouse. Typically, square brackets clarify or explain an ambiguous sentence in a quoted sentence. For example, she, the governor, insisted that the restructured budget would not result in school funding shortfalls. Translations within questions. You can put the translation in square brackets when you use a foreign word or phrase in your writing, unquoted. For example, the only thing I know how to say in German is Danke schön, thank you. It is appropriate to use square brackets around vulgar, offensive, or objectionable words in a quotation, such as expletive or the longer expletive deleted. Sometimes these words are written in capital letters, especially in formal documents like court transcripts. For example, the defendant told the court that he knew the expletive deleted had been stealing from the company for several years. My father was a real expletive, Smith told reporters, but I never stopped loving him. Brackets within brackets. Sometimes one or more bracket elements may be contained within a larger one. To distinguish it from the around bracket of the larger text, the square bracket element is usually enclosed within the brackets. While it is common to see multiple sets of brackets used within one another, this is generally discouraged, especially in more formal academic or professional writing. For example, the authors maintain that the correlation is strong enough to assume causation. Though they make this claim with caution. Brandon Dobbs et al. 2010. The other types of brackets. There are two other types of brackets besides round brackets and square brackets: braces and angle brackets. In mathematics and computer programming languages, braces, also known as curly brackets, are commonly used to express sets of numbers. As a symbol of shared meaning or connection between multiple lines of text in non-mathematical and non-programming writing, braces are sometimes used in handwriting. Since modern typesetting does not offer an easy way to create multiple line-spanning braces. For example, you may fill your sandwich with chicken, pork, beef, and one type of cheese: cheddar, Swiss, pepper jack, mozzarella. They are, however, rarely used in this way. Note, braces should never be used in place of round or square brackets. Angle brackets, also known as chevrons, is also used in mathematics. It is also possible to use angle brackets to indicate internet URLs or email addresses, as in further information can be found at. However, this practice is becoming less common as URLs and email addresses become more common. It is still common to see angle brackets used in this manner to indicate URLs in the Works Cited section of research papers and separate a person's name and email address in email recipients. Lesson synopsis. A round bracket separates parenthetical information that has no grammatical significance to the structure of the overall sentence. Square brackets contain information that doesn't affect the sentence's overall structure. A square bracket can also differentiate parenthetical information within another bracket set. There are two other types of brackets besides parentheses and square bracket: braces and angle brackets. Connectors and dividers. Lesson goal. A hyphen, dash, slash, or apostrophe is a connector or divider between different letters, words, phrases, or clauses. In this module, you will get to know about these punctuations and their uses. Lesson outcome. Define hyphen in detail. Know where to put hyphens when necessary. Describe the technical use of hyphens. Explain the definition of dashes. Identify the conventional uses of dashes. Expound slashes along with types and figure out the places to use slashes. Learn about apostrophe profoundly and spot the necessity of apostrophes in forming constructions. Understand the other uses of apostrophes in many aspects. Hyphen. Hyphen has a solid explanation. There are multiple words connected by hyphen. It can be placed between the letters without any spaces. Essentially, a hyphen is a punctuation mark used to separate or compound different numbers, word elements, or words. Hyphens join two words with the same meaning. When writing, use hyphens to form compound nouns, verbs, and adjectives. For example, not so pretty, run down, editor-in-chief, up to date, so. Where do you use hyphens? Hyphens are commonly used in grammar to form hyphenated adjectives that come before a noun that modify. A hyphen can also be used to divide a word with insufficient space on a line. Dividing words. If a word doesn't fit within a line, use hyphens at the end of it. You should divide by syllables, not by one-syllable terms. Here's an example. Shukonna asked Gemma, "When are you performing?" Compound nouns. Compound nouns often contain hyphens. Other compounds can also be open or closed. These are some examples of compound nouns with hyphens. Yesterday, my brother-in-law visited me. Compound adjectives. The hyphen should only be used after the word you are modifying, not before it. Most compound adjectives are hyphenated. Here are some examples. There are 3 two-bedroom units available. This sentence uses last minute as a hyphenated adjective to modify the word changes. The following are other compound adjectives, phrases that use hyphens. High-level radiation, prize-winning book. Compound verbs. You should check the dictionary to see if you need to hyphenate some common compound verbs. Examples of hyphenated compound verbs are as follows. Thanks for gift wrapping my purchase. An uninspired man video games his problems away. Participles. In addition to compound adjectives, participles are sometimes required to be hyphenated. The English language uses participles to form adjectives and verb tenses from verbs. In any case, participles should only be hyphenated after nouns. Here are some examples. I stared at a good-looking man. A well-known chef will cater the wedding. Avoiding double vowels. Hyphenate words with double vowels to make them easier to read. As examples, the country stayed semi-independent after being colonized. Hallmark is a preeminent greeting card company. Compound numbers. Separate compound numbers with a hyphen as an example. Last month, this company celebrated its 50th anniversary. Age or time. When describing the ages and durations of things and people, use a hyphen. If the period is plural, use hyphens to avoid confusion. Months, years, weeks, days, and more are all included in this guideline. Here are some examples. Lily and Ron have a 3-year-old son. Compound adjective. Lily and Ron now have a 3-year-old. Multi-word compound noun. 3-year-olds modify the noun 3-year-old in the first sentence. As nouns, they appear in the second sentence. To indicate distances and times, use a hyphen. Between these characters, do not add a space. For example, there will be 300-400 attendees. English and metric units. In most style guidelines, hyphens are used for modifiers that show both metric and English units. For example, the businessman owns a 50-foot yacht. Joining a prefix with another word. The hyphen is also used when joining a capitalized word to prefix. For example, un-American, post-Easter, pre-Christmas. Hyphens should also be used in the prefixes self, all, and ex. For example, all-knowing, ex-boyfriend, self-esteem. Joining a word with a suffix. Suffixes follow root words. The result is the formation of new words that have different meanings. As an example, scandal becomes scandalized by adding the suffix ise. If you use the suffixes elect, type, or designate, always add a hyphen. The president-elect's heroic act was mentioned in every book I read. The suffix like also requires a hyphen in some words with 3 or more syllables. For example, the factory-like school building needs renovation. The prefix re. Use a hyphen with re if removing the hyphen will change its meaning or cause confusion. For example, The upholsterer recovered the couch in the red fabric. Removing the hyphen will confuse recovery, which means to return to the normal state of health, strength, or mind. Try to repress the button. Removing the hyphen will cause confusion with repress, which means to subdue someone or something using force. Spelling. Add a hyphen letter by letter when explaining or showing how to spell a word. For example, the correct spelling of chiaroscurist is CHIAROSCURIST. Chiaroscurist. Stammering. If you are narrating, use a hyphen to indicate tears or stammering. For example, I am so sorry, I broke the car. Technical use of hyphen. In addition to forming compounds grammatically, the hyphen serves two technical purposes: dividing numerical sequences. Often, hyphens break up long numerical sequences that don't represent a sum. This is often used for telephone numbers or unique personal identifiers, expressing a range of values. When indicating a range of values, usually numbers or dates, hyphens are used. For example, please refer to page 85-95 for more information. The clinic is open Monday to Friday, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. They can also be used when reporting the result of a ballot or the score of a contest, as in, the home team beat their rivals 10-2 in the homecoming game. Dashes. Here presents a complete guide to dashes. Dashes are little horizontal lines that appears in the middle of a line of text, not at the bottom like underscore. In most cases, it indicates a range of pause and is longer than a hyphen. Hyphens separate parts of words, not groups of words like dashes. There are three types of dashes: M, N, and double hyphens. N dashes and M dashes are the most common. Using the letters N and M as a comparison, it is easy to remember the difference between these dashes. As well as differing in length, these dashes serve different purposes within a sentence. Conventional uses of dashes. This will discuss the uses of N and M dashes particularly. When other punctuation would be awkward, M dashes come to the rescue. If a parenthetical phrase contains multiple commas, M dashes can replace brackets. For example, after a split second of hesitation, the second baseman leaped for the ball, or limped for it. After a split second of hesitation, the second baseman leaped for the ball, or rather limped for it. M dashes are useful when conveying strong emotion or creating a more casual tone. Here are some comparisons. He is afraid of two things: spiders and senior prom. Writers and transcriptionists use M dashes to replace unknown, censored, or intentionally omitted letters. M dashes often appear in pairs or threes. A former employee of the accused company offered a statement of the record. The N dash is shorter than the M dash. There is a difference between N dashes and M dashes in their function. Using the N dash to indicate spans of time or ranges of numbers. The N dash is often used when indicating time spans or ranges of numbers. The dash here means either through or to. Here are some examples. The scheduled window for the cable installation is 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. Using the and dash to indicate a connection. Two words can also be connected with an and dash. Hyphenated terms and two words phrases are connected with and dashes. By using the dash in this way, a compound adjective is created. Here is an example for you. The pro-choice, pro-life argument is always a heated one. To set off material for emphasis. Dashes are the opposite of brackets. Dashes indicate that the reader should pay more attention to the material between the dashes instead of frames, which means less emphasis on the enclosed material. A dash adds drama, a parenthetical phrase whispers. There are several ways to emphasize with dashes. You can use a dash to emphasize material at the beginning or end of a sentence. Example: after 80 years of dreaming, the older man finally realized it was time to revisit the land of his youth, Ireland. Example: The Office, a harmless television program or a dangerously subversive guide to delinquency in the workplace. The middle of a sentence can be highlighted with two dashes. A complete sentence can be written within the dashes in some style and grammar guides. Example: everything I saw in my new neighborhood, from the graceful elm trees to the stately brick buildings, reminded me of my alma mater. Example: complete sentence. The students, each of over 18, lined up in the streets to vote for the presidential candidates. Modifiers can be emphasized with two dashes. To highlight words or phrases that describe nouns, dashes can be used. Example: the fairgrounds, cold and wet in the October rain, were deserted. Example: Nettie, her chin held high, walked out into the storm. To indicate sentence introductions or conclusions, dashes can be used to indicate whether certain words are introductions or conclusions. Example: books, paper, pencils. Many students lacked even the simplest tools for learning in 19th century America. Example: to improve their health, Americans should critically examine the foods they eat. Fast food, fatty, fried foods, junk food, and sugary snacks. 2-mark bonus phrases. Commas are normally used to separate informational or clarifying phrases from the meaning of a sentence. However, dashes can be useful when the term already contains one or more commas. Slightly confusing example with commas. Even the simplest tasks, washing, dressing, and going to work, were nearly impossible after I broke my leg. A better example with dashes. Even the simplest tasks, washing, dressing, and going to work, were nearly impossible after I broke my leg. To break up dialogue. A dash can indicate a pause or interruption in written dialogue if a speaker suddenly stops speaking, hesitates, or is interrupted by another speaker. Example: I don't know what you were talking about, denied the politician. Example: Mimi began to explain herself saying, I was thinking, I don't care what you were thinking. Rodolphe interrupted. Slashes. A slash is a punctuation mark that is used as a substitute for the conjunction or and is represented by a slanting line. It indicates the availability of options and choices. Slashes are commonly used to separate letters, numbers, or words and can indicate or, as in and, or, and, or, as in stragglers / deserters, or per, as in fit / second. Essentially, a slash is a small diagonal line that is used between words to indicate that an alternative application is needed, as in and, in dates of fractions such as 3/8, or to represent per, as in feet / second, among other uses. Places of slashes. Depending on how you use them in writing, slashes can mean many different things. Slashes can be tricky to use in writing. Forward slashes have different meanings depending on their context. These examples illustrate how the same slash can mean different things. To show a line break in prose. A forward slash is usually used to separate lines when quoting poems, plays, or songs. Slashes are used to transition between short lines in a long line. To indicate alternatives. Slashes are also used as alternatives or substitutes for and / or in sentences. All or some of the terms listed could apply if a forward slash is used. Informal writing is best suited to it. For example, faculty members / the board of trustees / chief guests sit in the front seats. To form abbreviations. Many common words and phrases are abbreviated or shortened using slashes. But in case of abbreviations, it is safe to avoid song dashes in formal or official writing. In this example, W/O means without, C/O means care of, and A/C means air conditioning. To indicate connection on opposition. Forward slashes indicate connections or relationships between items. The slash is used to indicate that the two things are either closely related or opposite to each other. No matter how friendly or authoritative our new coach is, we must listen to him. To denote dates and fractions. Forward slashes are commonly used to write fractions and dates. The forward slashes must be used if you want to leave out the words in dates and only use numbers. Fractions are no different. Fraction example, 3/4. Date example, 12/25/2022 for December 25th, 2022. Apostrophe. The apostrophe indicates whether a noun is the possessive case or whether one or more letters have been omitted from a word. In English, the apostrophe indicates possession and marks contractions. The little squiggle may seem simple, but it confuses many people. Apostrophes are often misplaced or forgotten and sometimes appear in words that are optional. For example, Harold's dog is bigger than Tiffany's. Use of apostrophe in forming constructions. When two or more words are combined to form one, apostrophes are used to form connections. Verbs and pronouns are the most commonly affected words by contractions. The apostrophe replaced the A in I am, the U in lettuce, and the WI in you will in the contractions. I am, let's, and you will. It is the same for the word doesn't, where the apostrophe replaced the O. Some famous authors' quotes contain contractions. Italicized words have contractions. Bold-faced letters indicate the letters that make up the contraction, and the apostrophe replaces any missing letters. For example, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Maya Angelou. She wasn't doing a thing that I could see except standing there leaning on the balcony railing, holding the universe together. J.D. Salinger. Other uses of apostrophe. Apostrophes are used for a variety of reasons. Possessive nouns. Possessive nouns require apostrophes. Different style guides and grammar resources have different rules for making a noun possessive. The general rules are as follows. Add an apostrophe followed by the letter S to singular and plural nouns that don't end in S. For example, cat becomes a cat's and people becomes people's. Just an apostrophe is required for plural nouns ending in S. For example, cats become cats. Just add an apostrophe if a plural noun is used as a singular noun. For an example, the United Kingdom becomes the United Kingdoms. Grammar resources generally recommend using S for singular noun with S endings. Santa Claus, for example, becomes Santa Claus. These words may, however, be ended with just an apostrophe in style guides. Omitted letters in contractions. An apostrophe replaces the removed letters when a letter is omitted. As a result of this substitution, a contraction is formed. Couldn't, haven't, don't, we have, I'll, you are, and should are examples of contractions. Written out. You should have gone there. Contraction. You should have gone there. When mimicking casual speech, an apostrophe can also shorten words. For example, I suppose I could help him out. It means I suppose I could help them out. Afraid I don't know what he's thinking. I am afraid that I don't know what he is thinking. Decades are also subject to this omission rule. For example, the movie was popular with adults who were born in the 70s. It means 1970s. Letters, numerals, and abbreviations in plural. An apostrophe may also be used in a few other rare cases. It is best to consult the style guide or grammar resources used for the following instances. When a single letter is referred to as a plural, an apostrophe is sometimes used to clarify its meaning. Consider, for instance, according to her report card, Emily got straight A's. Using numerals as an example. It's amazing how Ryan rolled 6 tens in a row. To avoid confusion with possessive nouns, plurals of abbreviations usually do not use an apostrophe. Sometimes using an S alone for an abbreviation would be awkward. As an example, while sailing the uncharted ocean, the ship's radio picked up several SOSs. Lesson synopsis. A hyphen is a punctuation mark that separates or compounds different numbers, elements, or words. Hyphens are commonly used in grammar to form an adjective before a noun they modify. Dashes are little horizontal lines that appear in the middle of a line of text, not at the bottom like underscores. N dashes and M dashes are the most common dashes. The N dash is shorter than the M dash. Dashes are the opposite of brackets. Quotes material. Lesson goal. Quote materials are basically used in writing quotes or any notes. This sign seems so aesthetic in design and shape. It basically makes sentences lively. In this module, you will learn quotation marks, their necessity to use, ellipses, and their sphere to apply in detail. Lesson outcome. Comprehended quotation marks with fine points. Identify the places of quotation marks specifically. Define what is ellipsis. Figure out where to use ellipsis. Quotation marks. A quotation mark is a punctuation mark that serves a variety of purposes. This is used in pairs in various writing systems to set off direct speech, a quotation, or a phrase. Direct quotations are often started and ended with quotation marks. There are typically 2 apostrophes at the beginning and 2 apostrophes at the end of a quotation mark. For example, Armin said, quotation mark, I went to the mall and saw Naurin speaking with him, end of quotation mark. My father presented me with a voucher for the quotation mark Radisson Blu Hotel, quotation mark. I found this quotation mark pink quotation mark cover an hour ago. Places of quotation marks. In a quotation, quotation marks indicate the beginning and end of the reference. They let the reader know when you used direct speech or material from another source. Now have a look at the places of quotation marks. Direct quotations. A direct quotation indicates that words are taken directly from another source or text. Direct quotations should be enclosed in quotation marks at the beginning, at, and the end. Quotation mark, the last person I would ask is you, quotation mark, she said. Use quotation marks when quoting a short quote in an essay or paper. According to Pauline Kael, quotation mark, at his best, Jean Renoir reveals the beauty of our shared humanity, the hopes and dreams, the absurdities and follies that we all share, quotation mark. Direct quotations that are longer than 5 lines should be indented and single-spaced. There is no need to enclose a long quote in quotation marks. A colon should precede it. Quotations within quotations. To indicate a quotation within a quotation, use single quotation marks within double ones. Double quotation mark. My father told the psychiatrist, single quotation mark, I refuse to listen to any excuses. Single quotation mark, then double quotation mark, he said. Use the same quotation marks as in the original passage when indenting and single spacing a long quotation. The writer quotes the playwright Ionesco from the critic Martin Esslin. In this passage, Martin Esslin describes Ionesco's attitude toward spontaneity. As creative element, spontaneity is important to Ionesco. Quotation mark, I have no ideas before I write a play. I have them after I have written the play or when I am not writing, quotation mark. He still believes that his writing is meaningful despite the spontaneous nature of its creation. In contrast, intuitive imaginations are cognitive process explorations. Miscellaneous uses of quotation marks. Quotation marks are also required in a few other situations. You are distancing yourself from offensive terms or expressions, quoting someone else. The disappointed bodybuilder blamed the quotation mark fat slobs who judge the contest. Assigning a word to a specific meaning. She repeatedly used the term irregardless without realizing it had no meaning, adding a nickname to a formal name. As committee chair, Ray Shortley Johansson was unanimously chosen. An indication that a poem, essay, or article is part of a longer work. As with bibliographical and footnote information, check your writing guidelines to see if you need to use a specific style guide. Words spoken or written previously. Groucho Marx once said, "Either he is dead or my watch has stopped." To highlight names of things such as ships, books, and plays. With her bow door open, the "Herald of Free Enterprise" was quickly flooded by the sea. It didn't take her long to find herself lying in shallow water on her side. Signifying the so-called or the alleged. Upon leaving, Peter's mentor rushed back to the pub after taking off his uniform. To demonstrate that a word refers to the word itself, not its meaning. Dogs is plural. The quotation mark is also called a speech mark, a quote, and an inverted comma. Ellipses. Ellipses, plural ellipses, are marks composed of 3 dots. These dots may or may not be separated by spaces depending on the style guide or grammar resources. An ellipsis commonly used in quotation indicates omissions in formal writing. Ellipses are commonly used in informal writing and fiction to indicate hesitation, pauses, or pause between sentences. Examples of an ellipsis in a sentence. Examples of ellipses are given below. The first and second sentences are used in formal writing, while the third and fourth sentence are used in informal writing or fiction. The law says that no person can release a wild animal in a crowded supermarket. Abraham Lincoln once said, 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth a new nation, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal." Uses of ellipses. An ellipsis is appropriate in a variety of situations. It is generally accepted that ellipses are only used in formal writing but can also be used in informal and fiction writing. Omissions. In formal writing, an ellipsis is typically used to indicate an omission. The most common use of ellipses is to shorten quotations by alerting the reader to lost text in the original. According to a source, for example, the gorilla is one of the smartest animals on Earth. They form strong family bonds in the wild. Some captive gorillas, such as Coco, have been taught to use sign language. Another writer may quote this source like so: "I was researching gorillas and found a passage that said, 'Gorillas are really smart animals. Some captive gorillas have been taught to use sign language. That's cool.'" Ellipses indicate that parts of the source have been omitted. In addition to missing words and sentences they thought were irrelevant, the writer needed to change the meaning of the original quote. Informal uses. Using ellipses to indicate omissions is still acceptable in informal writing. In informal writing and fiction, ellipses have a few other uses. Hesitations. An ellipsis or multiple ellipses indicate hesitation or difficulty finding the right words. As an example, Your Highness, I was implying that I would never question your wisdom. The Chancellor stammered profusely. Pauses or trailing sentences. When used at the end of a sentence, an ellipsis indicates that the speaker is pausing, dramatically mumbling, or their sentence has ended. Consider, for instance, there are a lot of people who believe they can hunt werewolves. The old hunters told me. As soon as they find one, she never finished the sentence, but she didn't have to. An ellipsis may also be used informally to indicate pause or hesitation, such as expressing confusion or disbelief. Person A. Okay, so I adopted 101 Dalmatians today. Person B. What? Why? Lesson synopsis. The quotation mark is used in pairs in various writing systems to set off direct speech, a quotation, or a phrase. In a quotation, quotation marks indicate the beginning and end of the reference. The quotation mark is also called a speech mark, a quote, and an inverted comma. Ellipses, plural ellipses, are marks composed of 3 dots. Ellipses are commonly used in informal writing and fiction to indicate hesitation, pauses, or pause between sentences. Other signs and symbols. Lesson goal. There are other signs used along with English punctuation. They carry immense importance in conveying messages and other curricula. This module will discuss those signs and symbols with their uses. Lesson outcome. Know how the asterisk looks like. Identify the ampersand and the swung dash among other signs. Mark out the appearance of a sign and number sign. Recognize the interpunct clearly. The asterisk. The asterisk is a star-shaped symbol used in writing. Most often, it's used to indicate a footnote, but it can also be used to clarify a statement or censor in appropriate language. Here you go with the uses of the asterisk in different contexts. The Barnsley Volleyball Club and the Aston Volleyball Club are the only 2 undefeated teams. The Carpenters played only 8 games due to a labor strike. Big Bob's bird bats are the best. Birds love them. Birds do not endorse Big Bob's bird butts. According to the police, the suspect called his neighbor a piece of asterisk sign. When to use the asterisk sign? The asterisk is most commonly used in formal and especially academic writing to introduce a footnote. There are 2 fairly common uses of the asterisk in writing other than this. Footnotes. An asterisk is typically placed after a word or sentence that contains a footnote. Footnotes have many uses, such as providing context or citations. According to the format, footnotes may appear alongside an asterisk or at the end of a chapter or index. Similarly, if the footnote appears on the same page, it will be preceded by an asterisk. Here is an example of how a writer might use an asterisk with a footnote. In the Space Jam League of Basketball, Bugs Bunny is widely regarded as the greatest player. A rascally rabbit averages 3,000 points per season. Based on Space Jam Basketball Association statistics. Clarifications. The use of asterisks in advertising and marketing is particularly common. Asterisks are typically used to inform a reader of a clarification found in the fine print of an advertisement. It is common for these clarifications to provide legal disclaimers about statements in the ad. The following advertisement uses an asterisk, for example, "Customer participation is open to all. Enter now." Asterisk sign, a minimum age of 18 is required for all contestants. As a result of this usage of the asterisk, people often consider the symbol to be a warning sign that something should be taken with a grain of salt or of questionable accuracy due to the extra context being left out. A person typically refers to this usage when they say something comes with an asterisk attached. Censorship. Asterisks are sometimes used to censor offensive or inappropriate language in writing. The use of closed captions in news writing and television is particularly prevalent. Letters of objectionable words or characters are typically substituted with asterisks. Some organizations censor words completely, while others only omit certain letters. An example of an asterisk in a newspaper story would be, "Champion Michael the Mouth Davis said his opponent was a lazy F*** signs, who hadn't trained properly for the championship bout." Multiplication. Asterisks are also used as a symbol of multiplication, such as 12 asterisk signs 2 is equal to 24. The ampersand. The ampersand is a symbol that represents the word "and". It is primarily used in informal writing and business names. Except in certain cases, such as abbreviations, for an example AT and T. It is typically replaced by the word "and" in formal writing. Examples of the ampersand in use. Informal writing. There were chicken fingers, macaroni and cheese, and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on the menu. Business names. Burns and Noble. Ben and Jerry's. Abbreviations. AT and T. R and D. Legal contexts. Power of attorney and consent to act. When do you use an ampersand? Ampersands are generally discouraged in formal writing except in a few rare cases. An ampersand is more likely to be used in informal writing or texting. Company's name. Many companies use an ampersand as part of their business or product names. Even in formal writing, an ampersand can be used to indicate these businesses or products. Here are a few examples of well-known phrases that use ampersands. Fast and Furious. Mumford and Sons. Simon and Garfunkel. Procter and Gamble. Barnes and Noble. H&R Block. A and W Root Beer. M&M's. Abercrombie and Fitch. Ben and Jerry's. Procter and Gamble. Barnes and Noble. H&R Block. A&W root beer. To clarify a series in informal writing. Ampersands may be used to avoid repeating and confusingly using the word in a series that includes items that use the word and. In informal writing, this usage is most common. Breakfast options include bacon and eggs, cereal, toast and jam, pancakes, waffles, and ham and cheese omelets. Ampersands. Breakfast options include bacon and cheese, cereal, toast and jam, pancakes, waffles, and ham and cheese omelets. Replacing the word in informal writing. Ampersands are often used in informal writing instead of the word and. This is usually done when people want to write short messages or limit their character count, such as when texting or messaging on social media. On a social media post, you might see something like this. Today, me and my BFF went to the beach. Got stung by a jellyfish, lol. #summer. How to use an ampersand? Ampersands are simple to use. They replace the word and. Ampersands are typically spaced like words, just like the word and. Exceptions to this general rule include company names without spaces after the ampersand. The company's preference is taken into account in such a case. In this case, regular spacing. Steve listened to rock and roll albums all day. Company name with no spacing. The documentary was televised on A&E. The swung dash. The swung dashes or wavy dashes are marks used in informal conversational English to signal that a number is approximate or approximated instead of exact. For example, I think we should have 40 guests today. Please be there 7 p.m. Bilingual dictionaries commonly use the device known as a tilde, and Oxford dictionaries have extensively used it but are disappearing from recent editions. The only friend who offered to help me was you. I have never met a person as lovely as you before. I pay the bills. She has all the fun. I need 3 items at the store: dog food, vegetarian chili, and cheddar cheese. When to use the swung dash? There are so many uses of swung dashes, such as swung dashes represent previously mentioned letters or words in a text. Dictionary definitions sometimes use this to save space, but it is no longer used. Formerly, dashes and ellipses were used to represent omitted words. Swung dashes can also be used for this purpose. Quiet adjective. Making no sound, silent A, library, a town, a shy child. The defendant is accused of grand larceny and corruption. Swung dashes are most often used to omit something obvious from context. It basically separates alternatives and indicates approximates. When transcribing the damaged text, it is often used as a ditto mark to indicate information that is omitted or unavailable. For example, you are the friend, the only friend who offered to help me. Though the swung dash is borrowed from other languages, still it is a necessary part of the English language. It is most often seen in dictionaries and academic texts. Swung dashes are used to indicate approximates or separate alternatives. These are frequently used in dictionaries to substitute a term. For example, The word henceforth, adverb meaning from this time forth, from now on, might be substituted with a swung dash in the following way. He will be known as the Duke of Burgundy. The percent sign. The percent sign indicates percentages, numbers, or ratios as fractions of 100. As a fraction of 100, the percent sign indicates a percentage, number, or ratio. As in 1%, the percentage symbol follows the number representing the actual percentage. Text and mathematical equations can both use the sign. Per mil and per myriad are two related signs that indicate percentages. According to the dictionary, the word percent means in each 100. The first known use of the term dates back to 1667, when it was derived from the Old Latin word per, meaning thoroughly, and centum, meaning 100. Uses of percent sign. A percent sign is most commonly used in tables, where there is a need to conserve characters, words, and phrases. In text situations, it is usually spelled out as percent. Alternatively, the text would say, I purchased an economics essay that shows the unemployment rate has dropped to 3% instead of the unemployment rate has dropped to 3%. The percent sign is used in various ways depending on the programming language. For example, PostScript, TeX, and LaTeX use percent to indicate line comments. To mark a variable as an integer, BASIC uses a trailing percent. Percent is used as a sigil to represent hashes in Perl. For example, Python and Ruby use the percent sign to denote parts of the template string that arguments will eventually replace. The percent sign is used in linguistics to show that some speakers form words differently. Divergent dialects to idialects of people or cultures may result in these different word formations. Numbers are often written as numerals with the percent sign. Formal writing usually uses numerals for numbers above 9. Examples: 10%, 80%, 175%. Mathematical, scientific, and technical documents usually contains numbers written in numerals. Example: 25% of the children were male. Numbers and the percent sign are usually used in newspaper and magazines to save space. Examples: 43% of adults with low literacy proficiency live in poverty. There are only 31% of college graduates with high-level literacy skills. The @ sign. The @ sign is commonly used in email addresses before the domain name. Social media often uses it to substitute the word @ informally. For example, for any questions, you can mail me at abc@gmail.com. Please call me at 8 tonight if you have any plan. When do you use an @ sign? The @ sign can appear as a typographical symbol, not a punctuation mark, in formal writing. However, it is commonly used in informal writing and online. Email addresses. Email addresses use the @ sign to separate usernames from domain names. For example, sandspamhere@gmail.com belongs to someone using the username sandspamhere and is hosted by Google through Gmail. In formal writing, the @ sign may be used when mentioning a person's email address since there is no efficient way to do so. Substitute for the word @ The @ sign may represent the word @ in informal writing, such as texting or social media. It would be more accurate to read "I own £100 at the casino" rather than "I own £100 at the casino." In formal writing, this usage would be considered unacceptable. Social media mentions. A person can tag another person when posting content on social platforms by placing an @ sign before their username. Depending on the forum, an alert or notification may be sent to the person. As an example, a post that reads "PB and James 1234 is my best friend." This message includes a tag to PB and James 1234 to ensure the message is seen by them or directed to their social media account. As a result, the @ sign is sometimes used as a slang verb on social media to refer to tagging someone in a post. Don't @ me. In a social media reply or response to this controversial post, one person is jokingly stating that they don't want their name mentioned or tagged. The interpunct. Interpuncts are typically the same size as full stops and placed in the visual middle of the X height. As a mathematical symbol, as a part of geminated L in Catalan, and so forth, the interpunct is used depending on the language and situation. Uses of interpunct. Indicating syllables. Interpuncts are used to indicate syllable breaks within words. This is most commonly found in dictionary entries to help demonstrate how a word is pronounced. EX interpunct CEL interpunct LENT, HA interpunct PPY, IR interpunct RRI interpunct TA interpunct BLE. As a decimal point. Occasionally, interpuncts are used as decimal points in numbers and to represent syllables. British English used to do this more frequently before modern word processors made it easier to type a period full stop. For example, RE interpunct TIRE interpunct MENT, retirement. In everyday writing, interpuncts are less common, even in British English, but they are not unheard of. Instead of full stops, decimal points can be represented by interpuncts. I bought this for just £550. As a result, the value of X is 43,456 interpunct 21 is a multiplication symbol. In addition, the interpunct can be used as a symbol of multiplication and the conventional asterisk. As an example, 2 interpunct 2 is equal to 4. 5 interpunct 4 is equal to 20. Lesson synopsis. Asterisks are typically used to inform a reader of a clarification found in the fine print of an advertisement. The ampersand is a typographical symbol. An ampersand is more likely to be used in informal writing or texting. Song dashes or wavy dashes are marks used in informal conversational English to signal that a number is approximate or approximated instead of exact. A review on abbreviations. Lesson goal. IE, EG, ETC are the commonly used abbreviations in English. This module will discuss these abbreviations in detail to give you a clear idea and understanding. By the end, you will be acquainted with every single detail regarding abbreviations. Lesson outcome. Get a briefing on IE to use. Know the applications of EG to apply. Differentiate between IE and EG for better understanding. Learn the use of ETC in a sentence. Briefing on IE. IE definition. IE stands for id est, which is another way to translate the Latin phrase that is, or in other words. The abbreviation is usually used to rephrase or elaborate on a point. It is typical for the acronym to be followed by a metaphor, clarification, or definition. How to accurately use IE in a sentence. If you are using IE in a sentence, don't italicize it even though it is formed from the Latin text, id est, that is italicized in written English. In scholarly and standard English writings, the abbreviation IE has been used for so long and widely that italicization and bolding are not required. A sentence should capitalize the abbreviation IE only if it appears at the beginning of a sentence, which is rare and usually incorrect. In addition to round or square brackets, IE can be followed by an em-dash or a comma. Using a comma before IE in a sentence is common. When IE introduces a dramatic idea or thought, an em-dash is used. IE could also be preceded by a colon. Suji had the basic items, at least a money bag, cell phone, or lipstick. It's wrong. Suji had the essentials, id est, a money bag, cell phone, and lipstick. It's also wrong. Suji had the basics, id est, money bag, cell phone, lipstick. This one is right. Using a comma with id est. A comma usually follows the abbreviation, but it's not uncommon to see IE without one. You may be prompted to remove the punctuation by some spell checkers. Multiple British-style guide, such as Modern English Usage by Henry Fowler, prescribe against putting a comma after id est in UK English. Do not use a comma after an abbreviation if you feel it is unnecessary at any point during your writing. Essays and company letters typically use brackets and commas together. Using brackets and commas is standard practice in not-so-formal writing situations. A quick recap. In summary, here are the points discussed above. Id est should be written after each letter, not IE or IE. If the abbreviation is used at the beginning of a sentence, it should be capitalized. Generally, abbreviations do not need to be capitalized or bolden in the middle of a sentence. But still, it depends on the context. For example, Neymar Jr. is one of the most sensational players of the Brazil national team. Here, abbreviation Jr. is a part of the name. That is why it has been capitalized in the middle of the sentence. Here are some sentences that contain the abbreviation id est. Along with crossword puzzles and writing, I enjoy touring on my bike id est, cycling hundreds of miles with all my camping equipment. Usually the cough lasts a short time, id est a couple of days. Your tubs may become yellow or white if you have hard water, id est very high mineral content, in your house. Application of EG. Meaning and origin of EG. The origin and true meaning of e.g. have come to light after it was believed for a long time that it meant example given. e.g. is an abbreviation for exempli gratia, which means for example. Other meanings of e.g. include for example and for instance. Use of e.g. or exempli gratia. e.g. is an abbreviation used to introduce examples that illustrates a point. If you want to provide a non-exhaustive list of examples, you can use e.g. to do so. You are advised to use a comma after it. You should add a comma before and one after the word e.g. When you use it in the middle of a sentence to make an example or list items that relate to your point. Commas are not necessary if you use them within brackets. With the e.g. abbreviation, you do not need to worry about italicization or cursive. You should be fine if you use it correctly and punctuate it correctly. Some examples of e.g. in a sentence. A poached egg is always my favorite way to cook an egg. For an example, boiled, scrambled, fried. The majority of the people present, for example, faculty professors and deans, disagreed with the result of the assembly. I love romantic movies. For example, The Notebook, A Walk to Remember, and Titanic. They always had Chinese food. For an example, fried rice and egg rolls, and made sure to get extra fortune cookies. In general, she loves furry animals, for example, cats, dogs, and rabbits. The difference between IE and EG. Id est and exempli gratia are often confused by English language writers, including native speakers. In similar situations, abbreviations are used after a category or noun and before another. Even the most conscientious writers can need clarification on the two. In English, the word exempli gratia is translated as for example by the abbreviation EG. A limited number of examples may be given by EG. More precise information may be provided by IE or id est. Put another way, EG opens up options, whereas IE narrows them down. After school, I will play video games with my cousins. Id est Fortnite. After school, I'll play video games, exempli gratia, Fortnite, Minecraft, and Grand Theft Auto. According to the first sentence above, it is clear what game the subject will play and with whom. In contrast, the second sentence lists the fun. Because exempli gratia does not indicate a complete listing, it's safe to assume the subject is planning on playing more titles than those mentioned. To emphasize the point, here are a few more sentences. Michael enjoys watching Donald Duck's nephews. Id est Dewey, Huey, and Louie. Michael enjoys watching classic cartoons, exempli gratia, Tugboat Mickey, and DuckTales. Use of etc. Etc. is a Latin phrase. The abbreviation of etc. is etc. In business and technical writing, abbreviations are more common than full phrases. Et means and, cetera means the rest. You use etc. to begin a list that you will not finish. It indicates items other than those you explicitly mention. In business and technical writing, abbreviations are more common than full phrases. How to use etc. in a sentence. When you are writing a formal statement or paper, be careful about using etc. If the unmentioned items are the same type as those mentioned earlier, they may be used. Imagine that King Mongkut always wanted his governors to eat when he eats and clap when he claps. He couldn't use etc. to indicate this after saying she should sit when he sits, because those actions don't logically belong to the same class as the others. Allow the children to eat only healthy food, vegetables, fruits, milks, fish, etc. You establish the category and then give a few examples. Substituting and so on and so forth will help you determine whether etc. is appropriate and etc. is redundant. It means and. Examples of etc. usage. Peter offered Shirley less work. If it's an imaginary dog, no grooming, feeding, etc. Meg Rossoff. I love you to pieces, destruction, etc. Lesson synopsis. IE stands for id est, which is another way to translate the Latin phrase that is, or in other words. You are advised to use a comma after eg, or exempli gratia. EG opens up options, whereas IE narrows them down. In etc., et means and cetera means the rest. Punctuation in different types of writing. Lesson goals. This module aims to introduce you to the various types of writing and how punctuation can be used in each. You will learn the significance of regular punctuation in academic writing and how to utilize punctuation to convey emotions and generate rhythm in creative writing. You will also learn how punctuation is important in conveying accuracy and clarity in journalism and technical writing, as well as crucial tips and techniques for utilizing punctuation appropriately in each genre. Learning outcomes. Learn how to use punctuation in academic writing properly. Understand the usage of punctuation in creative writing. Explore the importance of punctuation in journalism. Assess the use of punctuation in technical writing. Punctuation in academic writing. Punctuation is a crucial aspect of writing, especially in academic writing. It helps convey meaning clearly and effectively and can also help strengthen arguments and reasoning in text form. The correct use of punctuation marks is vital in academic writing for several reasons. You can use it to convey your intended message to readers. Textual arguments can be strengthened with punctuation marks. Punctuation marks that are missing or misused can completely change the meaning of a sentence. It helps to emphasize pauses, thoughts, ideas, and even the tone and emotion of the text. Different types of punctuation marks. Periods. A period is one of the most commonly used punctuation marks, popularly known as full stop. As its name suggests, it is mostly used at the end of a sentence to denote that it has ended. It is placed after a declarative sentence and a statement. It is also used after abbreviations. Examples. End of a sentence. I worked from morning to evening. Full stop. After abbreviations. He is Dr. Jonas of the HR department. Apostrophes. Apostrophes have two main uses: to indicate possession as part of a contraction. Confusion often arises due to the similarity in appearances of the possessive and contracted forms of the apostrophe. For instance, the word its is possessive and refers to an object that belongs to it. For instance, The book lost its cover. On the other hand, it '(s) is a contraction of it is. For example, it's raining outside. When using apostrophes to indicate possession with proper nouns, an apostrophe is added, unlike the possessive form its. For example, Tom's paper is interesting, but it's the paper's figures are hard to interpret. In this sentence, both Tom and it has an s added to indicate possession, but an apostrophe is used only with the proper name, Tom. The ending '(s) is rarely used outside of possession in formal scientific writing, since contractions are generally avoided. It would be better to remove the contraction from "It's striking that the essay is so accurate," but retain the possessive as follows. It is striking that the essay's accuracy is so high. Adding a possessive '(s) to words that already end in s is also tricky. For proper names and noun that end in s, either '(s) or single apostrophe are correct. For example, Tom's theory was elegant and Tom's theory was elegant are correct. When the proper noun is already plural, the only correct option is to add an apostrophe. The columns lengths were 30 cm. The column's lengths were 30 cm is incorrect. Parentheses. In academic writing, parentheses are often used to cite references, provide additional information, define abbreviations, and more. Every opening parenthesis must be preceded by a closing parenthesis. Parentheses must always be paired. However, some journals need to use of brackets for parenthetical remarks inside parentheses. For example, the buffer, which contained phosphate buffered saline (PBS). Regardless of style, brackets or parentheses must always come in pairs. Commas. The correct usage of commas can be challenging even for native speakers, because there are several different comma use conventions that vary depending on context and between UK and US conventions. Here are some common errors in comma usage in scientific writing. A comma should always be used after introductory words like however, furthermore, and interestingly to indicate a pause. Inserting a comma after these words creates a slight suspense that signals the reader to pay close attention to the following information. It is also common to use commas in a list of adjectives to replace the word and. For example, a study may contain a variety of items. As an example, we collected blood and urine samples, measured heart rate, respiratory rate, and blood pressure, and administered a questionnaire to all participants. Colons. The colon is most commonly used in scientific writing to introduce a list, an explanation, or an example. For example, the following parameters were measured: heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, and temperature. The colon is also used to introduce a direct quote and, in some cases, a question. It is important to note that the clause preceding the colon must be a complete sentence. It must have both a subject and a verb. Using a colon after an incomplete sentence, like this, the parameters measured were, colon, is incorrect. Hyphens and dashes. Hyphens and dashes are two punctuation marks that are often confused. The hyphen connects two or more words, like non-specific, into a single concept. It can also indicate a range of values, as in the study included participants aged 18-65. The dash is longer than the hyphen and can be used in several ways in scientific writing. One common use to indicate a break in thought or a change in tone. Like this, the results were unexpected. Our hypothesis was not supported by the data. Dashes can also indicate a missing word or add emphasis. Like this, our study demonstrated a statistically significant, although small, effect of the intervention. Using punctuation correctly will make your writing clear, concise, and easy to understand. Punctuation in creative writing. Punctuation is crucial in helping writers convey their intended meaning to readers. Proper punctuation can enhance a piece's clarity, tone, and flow, while improper punctuation can muddy the message. Some common punctuation marks used in creative writing include period, used to indicate the end of a sentence. The comma, used to separate items in a list, to separate clauses in a sentence, and to indicate a pause. Semicolon, used to separate two closely related independent clauses. Colon, used to introduce a list or an explanation. Dash, it indicates a sudden break in thought or a change in tone. Ellipsis, it indicates a pause, hesitation, or trailing off. The exclamation mark, it is used to indicate strong emotion or emphasis. Question mark, question mark is used to indicate a question. It's important to note that creative writing often allows for more flexibility with punctuation than other forms of writing, such as academic or technical writing. Writers may use unconventional or experimental punctuation to convey a certain tone or style. However, it's important to ensure that the punctuation still serves a clear purpose in writing. Quotation mark. Quotation marks are used to indicate direct speech, but they can also indicate irony or highlight certain words or phrases. To indicate possession or omission, quotation marks are used to indicate direct speech, but they can also be used to indicate irony or to highlight certain words or phrases. Apostrophes are used to indicate the possession or the omission of letters or numbers. Hyphens are used to join words such as compound adjectives or to indicate a range of numbers. In creative writing, punctuation can also create rhythm, pace, and emphasis. For instance, short, sharp sentences can create a fast-paced, urgent tone, while longer, more complex sentences can create a more reflective or contemplative tone. Using punctuation can also affect the reader's experience of the writing, such as creating pauses or building tension. It's important to remember that while creative writing allows for more flexibility with punctuation, it's still important to follow the basic punctuation rules to ensure clarity and coherence. By using punctuation deliberately and thoughtfully, writers can convey their intended meaning and create more engaging and effective writing. Punctuation in journalism. In journalism, punctuation is crucial in conveying information accurately and effectively. Punctuation helps clarify a sentence meaning, emphasize important points, and indicate pauses or breaks in thought. Some common punctuation marks used in journalism include comma. They are used to separate items in a list, clauses in sentences, or indicate a pause in thought. Example: After months of negotiations, the company finally signed a new contract with its employees, increasing their wages by 10%. Period. It is also known as a full stop used to indicate the end of a sentence. Example: the police arrested the suspect last night. Full stop. He is expected to appear in court tomorrow. Full stop. Question mark. Question mark is used to indicate a direct question. Example: what is the government doing to address the rising crime rates in the city? The exclamation mark. Used to indicate strong emotion or emphasis. Example: the concert was amazing. Exclamation mark. Colon. Used to introduce a list, an explanation, or a quote. Example: the report showed that the company's profits had declined for 3 consecutive quarters, quarter 1, quarter 2, and quarter 3. Semicolon. Used to separate two independent clauses that are closely related. Examples: the team's performance in the first half was disappointing. Nevertheless, they made a comeback in the second half. Quotation mark. It is used to indicate direct speech or quote. Example: according to the witness, the suspect said, "I didn't do it." Parentheses. Used to add additional information to a sentence. Example: the actress, known for her award-winning performance, is set to star in a new movie. Punctuation in technical writing. Punctuation is an essential element of technical writing as it helps to clarify meaning, convey empathy, and make the text easier to read and understand. Technical writing is a discipline that requires precision and consistency to impose order on otherwise complex and disorderly information. One of the fundamental ways to achieve this order is by applying stringent punctuation rules. Here are some important rules to follow when using punctuation in technical writing. Use periods to end sentences and to indicate abbreviations. For example, Mr., Dr., or etc. Use commas to separate items in a list, separate clauses in a sentence, and clarify meaning. For example, let's eat grandma versus let's eat grandma. Use semicolons to connect two independent clauses. For instance, I went to the store, I bought some milk. Use colons to introduce a list, an explanation, or a quotation. Here are the 3 main reasons: cost, convenience, and availability. Use dashes to emphasize a point to indicate a sudden change in thought or to set off a parenthetical remark. The results were clear. We needed to take action. Use parentheses to enclose a clarification or additional information. For example, the new software version 2.0 is now available. Use quotation marks to indicate a direct quote or to enclose a title of a book, article, or other work. For example, in the words of Shakespeare, to be or not to be. Consistent punctuation is essential for effective technical writing. Writers should choose a style for bulleted lists and use it consistently throughout the document. Regular sentences should end with a period or question mark, and exclamation marks should be avoided. Abbreviations should always be terminated with a period, and quotation marks should be used consistently with periods and commas inside the second quotation mark. Triplets should be punctuated with a comma after the second item and before end. Only a space should be used after colons, commas, and periods. Compound expressions require hyphenation and a comma should be used before which to clarify the meaning of a sentence. By following these guidelines, technical writers can ensure that their writing is clear, consistent, and easy to comprehend for their readers. Lesson synopsis. Punctuation marks that are missing or misused can completely change the meaning of a sentence. Confusion often arises due to the similarity in appearances of the possessive and contracted forms of the apostrophe. In academic writing, parentheses are often used to cite references, provide additional information, define abbreviation, and more. The clause preceding the colon must be a complete sentence. It must have both a subject and a verb. Technical writing is a discipline that requires precision and consistency to impose order on otherwise complex and disorderly information. Punctuation in professional communication. Lesson goals. In this module, you will discover the crucial function of punctuation in business communication. You will learn how to successfully utilize punctuation in business emails, memos, and reports to establish the right tone, emphasize crucial points, and communicate your message. By the end of this module, you will be equipped with the knowledge and abilities necessary to increase the impact of your writing and produce more polished and effective communication. Learning outcomes. Identify the correct use of punctuation in business emails. Apply appropriate punctuation techniques in writing effective memos. Utilize proper punctuation in report writing to enhance clarity and organization. Explore implementing punctuation strategies to set the desired tone in professional communication. Punctuation in business emails. The email has become one of the most important tools for communication in the business world. It's fast, efficient, and can help you stay in touch with clients and colleagues from anywhere. However, as with any form of communication, it's important to pay attention to the details, such as punctuation. Using punctuation effectively in your business emails makes them clear, professional, and easy to read. The importance of punctuation in email. Just like in any other type of writing, punctuation carries meaning in email. Commas, periods, semicolons, and other marks indicate boundaries and relationships between ideas. If you leave out punctuation, reading your email messages automatically becomes more difficult for recipients, who must figure out those boundaries and relationship for themselves. This can cause confusion and misunderstandings, which can be especially problematic in a business setting. Avoid overusing punctuation. Problems with punctuation extend beyond neglect of traditional punctuation to excessive use of certain punctuation. In business emails, exclamation points, dashes, and ellipses have proliferated beyond the bounds of appropriateness. While it's true the exclamation points can help convey enthusiasm, an email message full of them may come across as unprofessional or sound as though it is coming from someone young and inexperienced. It's best to use them sparingly and only when appropriate. Ellipses and dashes in email. The ellipses and dash are often used non-standardly in business emails. One cause of their popularity is growing uncertainty about standard punctuation rules. However, it's important to remember that the ellipses and dash have particular applications. For professional email, you should use them as they are meant to be used. Generally, the ellipsis won't appear much in a professional email, as its primary purpose is to indicate missing words, as in quoted material. More casual emails sometimes indicate a kind of auditory break or hesitation, but this application should be confined primarily to personal or informal emails. The dash is a relatively flexible piece of punctuation, but it should be used carefully. One reason to use a dash is for dramatic emphasis, but it can also set off parenthetical words and help ensure clarity. Be sure to use it appropriately to avoid confusion. Aggressive punctuation in email. Punctuation is sometimes used as a kind of weapon in business emails. Multiple consecutive exclamation points or question marks can be seen as aggressive and inflammatory and may offend or irritate the recipient. If you need to convey a sense of urgency, it's best to use authoritative but professional language to request what you need. Punctuation is a critical component of effective communication in email. Using it appropriately and sparingly ensures that your emails are clear, professional, and easy to read. Whether you are communicating with clients, colleagues, or vendors, taking the time to pay attention to your punctuation can make a big difference in how your message is received. Punctuation in memos. Writing effective memos is essential for communicating ideas and opinions to your colleagues, superiors, and clients. However, one aspect of writing that can trip up even the most experienced lawyers is the proper use of punctuation. We will provide you with tips on how to master the use of colons and semicolons in your memos, helping you to communicate more clearly and effectively. Here are some key points to keep in mind when using punctuation in memos. Use a colon to introduce a list. Colons are commonly used to introduce list items. However, it is crucial to ensure that the introductory clause preceding the colon is completely independent. This means that it must be able to stand alone as a sentence. Please do so to avoid confusion and inaccuracies in your writing. If you are introducing a list of items or topics, use a colon to separate the introduction from the list. For example, the agenda for the meeting is as follows. Use commas to separate items in a list. Within the body of the memo, if you were listing items, use commas to separate each item. For example, the items on the agenda are as follows. Item 1, Item 2, and Item 3. Use periods to end sentence. Like any other type of written communication, sentences in a memo should end with a period. Use semicolons to separate related independent clauses. If you have two independent clauses that are closely related, you can use a semicolon instead of a period. For example, we have received your order. We will process it as soon as possible. Use exclamation points sparingly. Exclamation points should be used sparingly in memos as they can come across as overly emotional or unprofessional. Only use an exclamation point if it is necessary to convey a sense of urgency or excitement. Punctuation in reports. Punctuation is an important aspect of writing that helps convey meaning and clarity. Some common punctuation marks include full stops or periods, commas, colons, semicolons, question marks, exclamation marks, and apostrophes. Punctuation is an essential element of writing, especially in reports. It helps to convey meaning and enhance readability. Here are some examples of proper punctuation in the report. Commas. A comma is used to separate items in a list, clauses in a sentence, or to create pauses in a sentence. For example, the project team included John, the project manager, and Sarah, the lead developer. Colons. Colons are used to introduce a list, an explanation, or an example. For example, the report covers 3 main topics: market research, competitor analysis, and customer feedback. Semicolons. Semicolons separate 2 closely related clauses in a sentence. For example, the company has achieved record profits this quarter. However, it still faces several challenges. Hyphens. Hyphens join words together to form compound words or indicate a word break at the end of a line. For example, the company's long-term goal is to become a market leader in the eco-friendly products industry. Ellipses. Ellipses are used to indicate a pause, an omission of words, or a trailing off of thought. For example, the results of the survey are, let's just say they were surprising. It's important to ensure that your writing in a report is clear and easy to read by using proper punctuation. Punctuation for emphasis, clarity, and tone in professional communication. Punctuation plays a critical role in professional communication, as it helps to convey emphasis, clarity, and tone in written message. Here are some examples of how different punctuation marks can be used for these purposes. Emphases. Exclamation marks. This can be used to express strong emotions or emphases. However, it's important to use them sparingly in professional communication, as overuse can make the message appear unprofessional. Example: thank you for submitting your report on time. 1 exclamation mark. Italics. Italics can emphasize specific words or phrases in a sentence. This can help to draw the reader's attention to important information. Example: we must prioritize the safety of our employees above all else. Clarity. Commas. Commas are used to separate items in a list, clarify the meaning of a sentence, and indicate pauses in speech. Example: the project team comprises Jane, the project manager, and 3 developers. Colons. Colons can be used to introduce a list, clarify a statement, or provide an explanation. Example: the agenda for the meeting is as follows: review progress, discuss challenges, and plan the next steps. Tone. Periods. Periods are used to indicate the end of a sentence. The use of shorter or longer sentence can affect the tone of the message. Example: thank you for your prompt response. We appreciate your cooperation. M-dashes. M-dashes can indicate a sudden change in thought or tone. Example: we have a problem. We need to find a solution quickly. A well-chosen punctuation mark can convey emphasis, clarity, and tone in professional communication. Punctuation should be used judiciously and appropriately to ensure a clear, concise, and professional message. Lesson synopsis. Using punctuation effectively in your business emails makes them clear, professional, and easy to read. If you leave out punctuation, the act of reading your email message automatically becomes more difficult for recipients, who must figure out those boundaries and relationships for themselves. Generally, the ellipses won't appear much in professional email, as its primary purpose is to indicate missing words, as in quoted material. Multiple consecutive exclamation points and/or question marks can be seen as aggressive and inflammatory and may offend or irritate the email recipient. The uses of capitalization. You will discover the significance of capitalization in writing in this lesson. You will specifically look at the guidelines for capitalizing titles and proper nouns, such as people's and places' names. You will also learn how capitalization varies depending on the genre of writing, including professional, informal, creative, and social media writing. You will have a firm grasp of how to utilize capitalization wisely to convey your idea clearly and correctly at the end of this course. Learning outcomes. Understanding the capitalization rules for proper nouns. Explore different capitalization rules for titles. Examine how capitalization works in different writing genres. Capitalization rules for proper nouns. When capitalizing a noun in English, you should determine if it is a proper or common noun before capitalizing it. In some languages, all nouns are capitalized to make them easier to identify in a sentence. However, only proper nouns should be capitalized in English. Capitalizing proper nouns. Proper nouns are specific nouns that refer to people, places, things, or ideas. For example, instead of using the noun dog, you could use the noun scout to refer to a specific dog. Similarly, instead of using the common noun country, you would use the proper noun Ireland. Although the rules of capitalizing proper nouns can seem complex, the basic principle is simple. If a person, place, thing, or idea has a specific name, it should be capitalized. Here are some examples of sentences that illustrate proper noun capitalization. My iguana, Spike, loves to eat crickets. Sean Menegon works at the movie theater. Are you taking American History 101? Dr. Harmon has been my dentist since I was a child. We have been studying Buddhism all semester. Let's take a trip to Miami this year. Ollie bought a Tesla last month. Spanish is a beautiful language to learn. Can we meet next Thursday? Australia is both a continent and an island. There are some tricky situations to consider when capitalizing proper nouns. Here are some common errors to avoid. Refrain from capitalizing on spring, summer, fall, and winter seasons. Don't capitalize on general subjects and courses like chemistry in I am studying chemistry. Don't capitalize sun and moon unless they are part of a list of astronomical names. Don't capitalize general titles such as president in the President of China will be in Washington, D.C. next week to visit with President Obama. Capitalization rules for titles. A catchy title is one of the most important factors that attract readers. However, creating titles involves much more than just picking a catchy phrase. Title capitalization can distinguish between a professional-looking article and poorly edited one. Using different style guides, including AP, Chicago, and AMA, we will cover capitalization rules. Regardless of the style guide, nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs are always capitalized in titles. In addition, capitalize the first and last words of the title. For instance, incorrect, the fault in our stars. Correct, the fault in our stars. You may quickly title your books, articles, and essays by using the example provided below to help you become familiar with the capitalization requirements of various style manuals. Articles. According to all major style guides, articles such as the, a, and n are lowercase unless they are one of the first or last words of the title. For example, incorrect, the art of racing in the rain. Correct, the art of racing in the rain. Conjunctions. Conjunctions are linking words that join clauses or sentences. AP style recommends that conjunctions of 3 letters or fewer be lowercase. In contrast, the Chicago style prefers to lowercase all coordinating conjunctions except for yet and so, and to lowercase subordinating conjunctions such as but capitalize if. For instance, incorrect, before we go and be happy. Correct, before we go and be happy, AP style. Correct, before we go and be happy, Chicago style. Nouns. All style guides agree that nouns should also be capitalized. For example, incorrect, the old man and the sea. The correct one is the old man and the sea. Verbs. Like nouns, verbs are always capitalized in titles. For example, the incorrect one is A Tale of Two Cities. The correct one is A Tale of Two Cities. Adjectives. Adjectives are describing words and should always be capitalized. For example, incorrect, 100 years of solitude. Correct, 100 years of solitude. Adverbs. Adverbs modify words and should always be capitalized. For example, incorrect, in cold blood. The correct one is in cold blood. Preposition. A preposition indicates that relationship between nouns and words in a sentence. Prepositions with 4 or more letters, such as between, above, and below, should be capitalized according to AP style. The Chicago style, on the other hand, suggests you lowercase all prepositions regardless of their length. However, a preposition may not always function as a preposition in a title when following the Chicago style. Capitalize a preposition when used adverbially or adjectively, as the Chicago manual or style suggests. For example, up in the air or on the road. In this case, the preposition is used as part of the title and capitalized for emphasis or style. The capitalization of titles depends on the style guide you follow. For specific rules on capitalization, consult a style guide to ensure that your titles appear professional. You can create catchy titles that are not only eye-catching, but also well-written and professional if you follow these guidelines. Nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs are always capitalized in titles, regardless of the style guide. Capitalization in different types of writing. Capitalization is an essential aspect of writing, as it helps to clarify the meaning of sentences and distinguishes proper nouns from common nouns. Here are some general guidelines for capitalization in different types of writing. Formal writing. Capitalization is important in formal writing, such as academic papers, business correspondence, and legal documents. In these types of writing, the first letter of each sentence should be capitalized, as well as proper nouns such as people's names, places, and organizations. In addition, titles should be capitalized such as president or doctor, and the first letter of the first word in a title should be capitalized as well. Informal writing. Informal writing, such as personal letters, is less strict about capitalization. While the first letter of each sentence should still be capitalized, proper nouns may not always be capitalized. This can depend on the writer's style, but it's generally acceptable to not capitalize common nouns, such as restaurant or park, unless they are part of a proper noun, such as Central Park. Creative writing. Capitalization is often used to create a particular effect or mood in creative writing, such as poetry or fiction. For example, a writer might choose not to capitalize any letters in a poem to give it to a more informal or casual tone. Alternatively, a writer might capitalize certain words to emphasize their importance or to create a sense of drama. Social media writing. While social media writing is often more casual than other types of writing, it's still important to use correct capitalization to ensure that your message is clear. Using excessive capitalization or unusual capitalization can make your writing difficult to read and may be seen as unprofessional. Additionally, some social media platforms such as Twitter have character limits, making it difficult to include proper capitalization. In this case, it's generally acceptable to use informal capitalization as long as your message is clear. When it comes to writing, capitalization is one of the most important aspects that can help clarify meanings and create different effects. Understanding where to place capitals in various types of writing can help writers communicate more effectively. Lesson synopsis. When capitalizing a noun in English, you should determine if it is a proper noun or simply a common noun before capitalizing it. Proper nouns are specific nouns that refer to people, places, things, or ideas. The capitalization can distinguish between a professional-looking article and a poorly edited one. According to all central style guides, articles such as the, a, and n are lowercase unless they are one of the first or last words of the title. A preposition may not always function as a preposition in a title when following the Chicago style. Informal writing, such as personal letters, is less strict about capitalization. Using excessive or unusual capitalization can make your writing easier to read and may be seen as unprofessional. Common errors while using specific punctuation. Lesson goals. This module helps learners avoid punctuation errors using commas, semicolons, apostrophes, and quotation marks. By the end of this module, you will be able to see and fix issues including erroneously employing semicolons, apostrophes, and commas and correctly using quotation marks. Additionally, you will acquire the abilities and information required to write effectively and clearly so that readers may understand what they mean. Learning outcomes. Find out what people commonly do wrong when using commas. Discover the most common mistakes made with semicolons. Get apostrophes right and avoid mistakes. Discover common quotation marks mistakes. Common mistakes with commas. Misusing commas is one of the most common grammatical errors writers make, and it can completely change the meaning of a sentence. To help you avoid these mistakes, here are some common comma errors to watch out for. Do not use a comma before a restrictive clause. Restrictive clauses are essential to the sentence's meaning and are not set off with commas. Example: the police caught the man who stole my phone. The book that I read last night was very interesting. In both these examples, the restrictive clauses "who stole my phone" and that I read last night are essential to the sentence's meaning. If the clause were removed, the sentences would no longer make sense. Therefore, no commas are used to set off restrictive clauses. Not using a comma before coordinating conjunction. A comma should appear before a coordinating conjunction that joins two independent clauses. Incorrect. I want to store, but I forgot my wallet. The correct one is, I went to the store, but I forgot my wallet. Using a comma instead of a semicolon. Semicolons are used to separate two independent clauses without a conjunction. Using a comma instead creates a comma splice. Incorrect. She likes to swim. She hates the cold. Correct. She likes to swim. She hates the cold. Placing a comma outside of quotation marks. Commas should always be placed inside the quotation marks, even if they are not part of the quote itself. Incorrect. To be or not to be is the question. Correct. To be or not to be, comma, quotation mark, is the question. Using a comma before a conjunction in a dependent clause. A dependent clause cannot stand alone and relies on the main clause to make sense. There should be no comma between the two clauses. Incorrect. Although I studied hard, comma, but I still failed the exam. The correct one is, although I studied hard, comma, I still failed the exam. It is important to avoid these common comma errors in your writing in order to improve your writing's accuracy and clarity. Common mistakes with semicolons. The semicolon is a punctuation mark that is the most commonly misused. While it is easy to use, many people need help understanding how to use it correctly. As a result, it is often used incorrectly, which can make writing unclear and confusing. However, with a little bit of knowledge and practice, you can use semicolons effectively and elevate the clarity and sophistication of your writing. Here are some common mistakes to avoid when using semicolons in English. Using semicolons instead of colons. A semicolon is used to join two independent clauses, while a colon is used to introduce a list or an explanation. Incorrect. I need to buy some groceries, semicolon, milk, bread, and eggs. So the correct form is, I need to buy some groceries, milk, bread, and eggs. Not using a conjunction with a semicolon. If you were using a semicolon to join two independent clauses, you need to use a conjunction, such as and or but, to make the relationship between the clauses clear. Incorrect. I'm going to the store, semicolon, I need to buy some milk. The correct form of this sentence is, I'm going to the store, and I need to buy some milk. Using semicolons to join dependent clauses. Semicolons are only used to join independent clauses, not dependent clauses. Incorrect. Because I'm hungry, semicolon, I'm going to make some food. Correct. Because I'm hungry, I'm going to make some food. Using semicolons excessively. While semicolons can be helpful in joining related clauses, overusing them can make your writing sound choppy and confusing. Incorrect. I woke up, semicolon, I ate breakfast, semicolon, I went to the work, semicolon, I came home. So the correct form of this sentence is, I woke up, ate breakfast, went to the work, and came home. By avoiding these common mistakes, you can use semicolons effectively to create clear and concise sentences. Common mistakes with apostrophes. Apostrophes are a tricky punctuation mark for many people, and misusing them is all too common in various types of writing, such as blog posts, press release, and marketing materials. While some may consider misusing an apostrophe a minor mistake, it can alter the intended meaning of a word or sentence. Therefore, it's essential to understand the proper use of apostrophe. Apostrophes serve two main purposes. Firstly, they indicate the omission of letters in contractions, such as can't instead of cannot, don't instead of do not, and it's instead of it is. Secondly, they indicate possession or ownership, as in the boy's shoes or the president's wife. Apostrophe mistakes to avoid. You should avoid using apostrophes for pluralizing words to avoid common apostrophe mistakes. For instance, cats and dogs is incorrect plural. It should be cats and dogs. However, one exception to this rule is when making a single letter plural, in which case an apostrophe is needed. Another common error is confusing it, apostrophe s, and its, its. It apostrophe s or its means it is, while its shows ownership, such as the dog chewed its bone. Although apostrophes usually indicate ownership, its is an exception. Using THEIR there, THERE there, and THEY apostrophe RE there interchangeably is another frequent mistake. THEIR or there indicate possession, like we are going to their house. THERE or there refers to a place such as place the bags over there, or there is a bookstore on Main Street. THEY apostrophe RE is a contraction of they and are, as in they are coming over for dinner at 6 tonight. It is essential to avoid conflating your and you apostrophe RE. YOUR indicates possession, like do your homework or clean your room. You apostrophe RE is a contraction of you and are, such as you are going to get in trouble if you don't clean your room. Keep in mind that even the best writers can make apostrophe mistakes, especially when writing quickly. Therefore, it's essential to proofread your writing carefully to catch and correct any errors. Common mistakes with quotation marks. Quotation marks are a common form of punctuation used to indicate direct speech, quotes, or titles of works. However, they can be tricky to use correctly, and many people need to correct their mistakes when using them. Here are some of the most common mistakes with quotation marks and how to avoid them. Using double quotation marks when single quotation marks are appropriate. One common mistake with quotation mark is using double quotation marks and single quotation marks are more appropriate. In American English, double quotation marks are typically used for direct speech, while single quotation marks are used for quotes within quotes or for emphases. For example, I said, "I don't like broccoli." She explained. The article's title was "The Benefits of Meditation." Using quotation marks for emphases. Another common mistake is using quotation marks to emphasize a word or phrase. However, quotation marks should only be used to indicate direct speech or quotes. If you want to emphasize a word or phrase, use italics or bold instead. Putting punctuation outside of the quotation marks. In American English, punctuation marks such as commas or periods should always be placed inside quotation marks. This differs from British English, where the placement of punctuation marks outside of quotation marks is more common. For example, "I can't believe you said that," she exclaimed. He asked, "Can you pass the salt?" Not using quotation marks for direct speech. Using quotation mark to indicate direct speech or dialogue in a sentence is important. This helps the reader understand who is speaking and what they are saying. For example, "I'm going to the store," he said. "Let's go for a walk," she suggested. Using single quotation marks instead of apostrophes. Another common mistake is using single quotation marks instead of apostrophes to indicate possession or contractions. Apostrophes should be used to show possession or to indicate that letters have been omitted in a contraction. For example, "John's car is parked outside." "It's a beautiful day today." You can improve that clarity and accuracy of your writing by correctly using quotation marks. Always double-check your use of quotation marks to avoid these common mistakes. Lesson synopsis. A comma should appear before a coordinating conjunction that joins two independent clauses. A semicolon is used to join two independent clauses, while a colon is used to introduce a list or an explanation. You should avoid using apostrophes for pluralizing words to avoid common apostrophe mistakes. Unlike British English, where punctuation marks are more commonly placed outside quotation marks, punctuation marks in American English are always placed within quotation marks.